Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is James.
And my name is Kim. And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 3, Episode 9. The episode is entitled Defiant. It first aired November 21st, 1994. Before we start on this one, anything to talk about from the last episode, which was Meridian?
No, it was perfect.
The episode itself, not the podcast, was a little forgettable. Not even really an okay episode. I mean, it was just a dud.
It was a TNG episode.
I resent that.
That should have starred Geordi.
No, I don't agree. All right, should we get started with this one?
Absolutely.
Okay, in the cold open, a lot of stuff happens in the opening sequence that is just intended to show Kira is stressed out. Dax and Miles are telling her a bunch of things, including Starfleet is asking for some big report by tomorrow.
Yeah, they need their TPS reports.
Well, if it's anything like a PowerPoint you have to put together for execs, I feel her pain. You spend so much time on it and then nobody cares, or they rip you to shreds. It's not fun. Well, she puts her head in her hands and then some tense music plays. And then we jump to the infirmary where Bashir is complaining about needing a runabout to get some medical supplies. And Kira just freaks out. She tells him off and she stomps out. He stops her and says she needs a day off. He takes her off duty and tells her that she is overworked and suffering from extreme stress.
He pulls medical authority on her.
He does, and he says even Cisco can't override it. She tries to talk him out of it. Did you notice she switched into calling him Julian?
Yes.
Like, we're friends. Doesn't work. So he takes her to Quark's, where he decides what she needs, and he has Quark give her Carvino juice, Lorvon crackers, a holosuite program, a gym jaw stick, and some gambling tokens. And Julian says she must use at least 2 of these things before she leaves. Then he says he's going to make her keep coming here until she enjoys herself. He hands her the gym jaw stick and says, have fun before leaving her alone. She eventually smiles, just as someone from the shadows says, looks like you have your evening all planned. And we see Commander Riker from the Next Generation.
It's Mr. Charming himself.
He says he hopes she has some room for the unexpected, and Kira turns toward him, smiling.
Yeah. I like Julian here. He expresses some genuine concern about Kira and how stressed she is and how she snapped. And he's not annoyed at her. He's more worried about her state of mental health and clearly physical exhaustion.
I don't disagree up to a point.
Yeah.
As soon as he takes her to Quark and decides how she should relax, he's gone too far.
Interesting.
If Kira needs a vacation, what she doesn't need is somebody to assign vacation tasks to her by someone who has no idea what her actual stress is like or what it's about. It's like he knows better, and that's not the way that you handle something like that. It's rude.
But she's a type A personality, so you have to prescribe her a particular way of relaxing.
They can do the same thing to her that they did to Miles. You essentially force her off the station.
Yeah.
It's like, go and do something else that's not work. And then, of course, he ended up on trial on Cardassia, but...
See how badly that worked out? I think Bashir is actually being smart here because the result could be Kira on trial in Cardassia if you ask her to take a vacation off station.
I don't feel like we're good enough friends for this behavior. I think if we were closer and he understood her better, the first thing he would realize is she doesn't like holosuites. So giving her a holosuite program is not relaxing. So, he doesn't know her well enough to be forcing relaxation activities on her.
Well, she could give that away to somebody whose birthday it was.
Like last week.
Was that Meridian?
Was that last week?
Oh.
Yeah, it was. That was the B story of Meridian. Oh, my gosh. So that's how forgettable that episode was. We already forgot what happened. Well, regardless of whether or not you appreciate this activity, we cue the theme song. Then we go to Riker talking to Cisco in Cisco's office, and he claims to be passing through on his way to Risa for a vacation he has also been forced to take. They talk some casual nonsense while outside in ops, Kira keeps glancing back in the direction of the office. So Dax asks who she's looking at, and Kira says, oh, it's Will Riker, who she met at Quark's last night, where they talked for hours. Dax, who is always interested in everyone's love life, sticks her nose into Kira's business.
Oh, yeah.
Kira says, well, he's warm and charming, but she's involved with someone else. So Dax wonders then why she keeps glancing back in his direction. Then Riker comes down the steps, and Dax reminds him that she loaned him 3 strips of latinum last time he was there. He looks totally perplexed at first, and then he says, oh, of course, that night is a blur. He shakes her hand and gives Kira a nod on his way to the elevator.
First hint that something's up. He didn't immediately recognize Dax.
He did not, and he certainly didn't know what she was talking about with the strips of latinum.
Yeah.
Kira is now walking through the promenade, and she's doing that strut that she does where she kind of half smiles at people as they pass her.
And clearly showing she's much more relaxed now.
It's one of the funniest things she does, that crazy walk, and then that, I don't know, she does, it's almost like the double guns at people. I don't know. It's
funny.
It's very Kira.
Yes. It's very John Wayne.
Yeah, it is very John Wayne. Well, anyway, she stumbles right into Riker and offers to give him a tour of the station.
Oh, that was very convenient.
It was.
Riker has spent the last hour crouching there waiting for her to walk past.
Oh, I'm sure. As they walk along, he asks if he can see their fancy new starship. So then we hit the Defiant. Kira and Riker both have to give a handprint and a voice print to be allowed in. There's also a security guy standing at the door.
I love the way the security guard is seriously just watching them the whole time. He's just staring at them.
I think he's pretty bored standing there.
Well, I would say on normal stations, yes, but I think on there, he probably has a lot of work.
He's constantly fending off Ferengi.
Yes.
Well, Miles is doing some work on the bridge of the Defiant, and he seems really happy to see Riker, but Riker says he has nothing to say to him, and he thinks Miles knows why. So a very confused Miles heads out with a funny look on his face.
He's pretty crabby towards Miles there.
Yeah, and Miles is like, what the heck was that about? He doesn't ask, he just leaves.
Right.
Kira asks what that was all about, but Riker declines to talk.
Okay, so I have a theory here. Miles has actually figured out a really good way to get a little bit of downtime in his shift.
Yeah.
He heads over to the Defiant, lies under a panel, and has a nap.
Has a little nap.
Yep. Anyone disturbs him, he just says, oh, I was working on this panel.
I was upgrading something, blah, blah, blah. Maybe.
Because if you notice, when they go into the Defiant, it's all dark, and when Miles gets up from underneath, it sounds like he's tired, like he's yawning.
Maybe that's what he's doing. He's having a nap. He found a place to rest, finally.
Exactly. And as a working man, Miles has these kind of tricks figured out.
Could be.
I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Okay. Kira starts giving Riker the rundown on the systems on the ship. It's all very flirty, and when Riker tries to get access to the tactical display, Kira has to release the bridge lockout. As soon as she does, Riker thanks her and then shoots her, and Kira goes down as he beams over some friends.
Oh, no messing around there. Just straight zap.
Yep.
I have to ask why that didn't set off any alarms. A weapons discharge on the bridge and a transport.
Weapons discharging on the promenade are supposed to get picked up, but they probably haven't put those things onto the Defiant yet. The Defiant's a warship. They must expect some phasers.
Okay. I'll accept that. And on top of that, maybe a warning when the tactical systems on the Defiant are enabled?
Yeah, since they added so much security, you'd think, well...
We know how security works here.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. They don't have great security on the station, so integrating with the security on the Defiant maybe just wasn't second nature, I guess. You know, they didn't think about that. They probably will now.
One step too far.
On this show, they always learn lessons the really hard way.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what Miles was supposed to be doing, but he was napping. So in Ops, an alarm starts blaring about the warp core on the Defiant, so they're tracking that somehow. It's going to blow up. So Riker calls them, and there's now some smoke behind him, and he says there's been an accident on the Defiant, and a plasma conduit exploded, injuring Major Kira. He tells them to release the docking clamp so he can get the ship away from the station. And I thought, here's where they could have just beamed Kira right to the infirmary, but they didn't do that. So they release the docking clamps, and he backs the ship away, but before Miles can beam anybody off, the shields go up, and the Defiant flies away. And we have just been carjacked.
Nicely done. All very smooth.
Riker's helmsman, who may or may not have a name, sets a course for the Badlands, and away they go. And then the truly disturbing thing happens. Riker pulls away his very fake-looking sideburns, and we learn it's Tom Riker, not Will Riker.
Oh yeah, he takes off the sides of his beard, showing the traditional Star Trek bad guy goatee. Unless they're Shadow Kira, and then they just have a leather clubbing suit.
Right. So this is the actual Riker with different memories after a transporter accident several years ago. And I know this was supposed to be the big surprise in this episode, but it was not a surprise because you accidentally told me a couple episodes ago that this was going to happen.
It wasn't my fault.
And B, the Hulu thumbnail told me.
I thought it was a TNG episode.
That's funny. Well, I'm glad that wasn't the big secret all the way to the end.
Yeah.
Since I already knew it. I mean, we're only like 11 minutes in and the big secret's out, so. Well, now we're having a briefing with Odo, Sisko, and Gul Dukat, and Odo is explaining who this Tom Riker guy is. There's a transporter accident from 9 years ago where Riker was split into two, with one of them returning to his ship and one being stranded on Nervala 4.
Yep.
Then he was discovered 2 years ago, and he chose to go by Tom instead of Will to distinguish himself from the other Riker, but he is genetically exactly the same, which is why the computer fell for it.
I have an over-analysis point for later on this.
Okay. Dukat is bored with this story, and he doesn't understand why he has to listen to this nonsense. And then Sisko says they believe Thomas Riker is a member of the Maquis, which makes Dukat nearly spit out his drink, because that means the Maquis now has the heavily gunned Defiant.
I do like how Dukat is listening to this, obviously very bored, just pouring a glass of wine or something. The only thing that would have made it better was if he put his feet up.
Yeah, he did not care about this story until they said Maquis.
Odo completely missed a chance here to say, when he asked, why am I listening to this? Odo could have replied, because not all viewers have watched the TNG episode.
Right. We have to make sure everybody's up to date.
Yeah.
In the very first episode of TNG, Encounter at Farpoint, Riker joins a little bit into the show. And when he gets to the bridge, they essentially show him the episode that has occurred up to the point. Like he's watching on a little TV what he missed.
Oh, funny.
So they could have done that. They could have just shown, parts of that episode.
That almost sounds like the gag from Spaceballs.
Yeah, exactly. Dukat says this is going to prompt a very strong response from the Cardassian Central Command. Sisko wants to launch a joint effort to find the Defiant, but Dukat says Central Command isn't going to buy this ridiculous story, about the transporter accident. And this is ultimately going to lead to war. Dukat says he'll need to take something back to Central Command to prove the good faith of Starfleet in this matter, and Sisko offers up himself, saying he can help them stop the Defiant and prove Starfleet's good faith. He helped design the Defiant, and he can help them find and disable it. But Dukat says the only way this will work is if he comes back to Cardassia with him and help destroy the Defiant. And then everybody looks at each other as the scene ends.
So Sisko was running the dockyards and helped design the Defiant. I think at this point, there should have been a big flashing thing somewhere on the screen saying, retcon in progress. Retcon in progress.
Or he may have just told Dukat that to make him think he was a good trade.
Oh, a little bit of subterfuge.
Because, we hadn't heard that before. That was new news.
Ah. Now, do you think the Cardassians wouldn't have believed this story because it's the type of lies or subterfuge that the Cardassians themselves would do?
About Riker, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, probably. They probably don't believe it as a true story because it is the kind of story they might make up.
Exactly. Continuing with this scene, Dukat seemed very worried about both fleets being deployed and it ending in a war. Do you think it's because Dukat knows that the Cardassian Empire couldn't win a war against the Federation? Or is it that Dukat feels he isn't ready or he isn't in a position to control the war? He seemed oddly like a peacemaker in this situation, which didn't seem to fit Dukat.
I don't think the Cardassians think they could win a war against the Federation.
Yeah.
They maybe think they could win one against Starfleet on its own, but that's not what the war would be. So I gotta believe certain factions are smart enough to try to avoid that war.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Dukat is an idiot. He's more devious than anything.
Right. There comes to a point where he knows the rhetoric is rhetoric.
Right. Well, over on the Defiant, Kira is being held in some tiny quarters.
So many good shots of the Defiant.
And Tom is apologizing to her for what he did. He thought she'd understand because she was a resistance fighter once. She's in her usual state of defiance on the Defiant.
Absolutely.
The bridge calls fake Riker. Well, he's not fake, but he's...
Goatee Riker.
Riker 2. After he leaves Kira in her tiny quarters, she rolls her eyes. On the bridge, they tell Tom that the other Maquis ships have arrived at the rendezvous point. They beam the rest of the team members on board, though they're invisible. We never see the rest of the team, this mysterious team.
They wanted to cut down on transporter effects.
Yeah. Later we see one guy, I think, but we don't see a team. Well, then Riker tells the helmsman to head for the Cardassian border and prepare to show the strength of the ship.
And he does a very Picard, engage.
Sisko is recording a log on Cardassia Prime about helping an enemy hunt down one of Starfleet's own ships. And Dukat is showing off his operational command center, bragging about controlling every Cardassian ship from here.
Oh, yeah. Dukat is literally strutting through the control center.
He's laying it on very thick. Yeah.
Mark Alaimo, I feel he perfectly portrays Dukat in these situations. You were concerned in a previous episode that maybe he was overplaying Dukat, chewing the scenery a bit. But I think this episode shows that he can play Dukat being more subtle, like in the previous scene, much more serious. And then the Dukat who's performing in front of his other Cardassians and is doing this larger-than-life strutting, basically overplaying what he's doing.
Well, it was in Civil Defense where I said that, and I thought he was chewing the scenery in those scenes with Kira.
Yeah.
And being even more ridiculous than usual. When he's just showing off to Sisko, I agree. It seems like it's fitting of the character. I think he does it well. But in that one particular episode, he just felt really over the top. Yeah. I know you were saying that was kind of the point of what he was trying to do there, but...
He's almost deliberately larger than life.
Yeah. I don't know. He just seemed one step too far in that episode. I get it here. Here I get that sort of pompous nature that he has, where he's just showing off about how important he is and how much control he has, because he's trying to show off to Sisko.
Right.
A female Cardassian enters, something we don't see very frequently. This is Koronos, the observer from the Obsidian Order. She welcomes Sisko, but then tells one of the guys sitting at a console to secure the consoles while the human is here. She tells Sisko that she's sure he understands they need to be cautious, and Sisko says he would have done the same, but he would have been more discreet.
Come on, Sisko. You locked Dukat out of a console on a runabout while he was sitting there.
That's true.
That wasn't terribly discreet.
Well, how would you do that discreetly?
Maybe tell them beforehand.
I guess he's just saying that he would be less showy about it. As usual, the Cardassian is showing off.
That's true. You know, initially, when I was thinking about this scene, I thought it was a little bit of a dig about Cardassian manners. But I think there's actually more to it. She very specifically stated he should be locked out from level 4 and above. This gives Sisko some insight into exactly where the Cardassians consider secure data to start. And it also reveals how their levels of security ascend in priority. It's not a huge piece of information.
Yeah.
In the intelligence work, that could be really important. Sisko has learned that their security levels ascend, and they consider secure data 4 and above.
Well, or it's more subterfuge, and you need level 3 just to order a coffee.
Oh, that's also true.
Or maybe you need level 3 just to get access to any console. Chances are good that that's not actually telling him anything, or is some kind of a ruse.
That's a good way of looking at it, too.
Yeah, or something to misdirect.
Interesting.
But what's really important about Koronos in this scene is her amazing purple outfit.
Oh, yeah.
This cool, dark purple, nicely fitting, I suppose maybe it is the Obsidian Order uniform. I don't know, we haven't really seen...
It's formal spyware.
Formal purple spyware. It's very good. Well, she wants the details of the Defiant's weapons, but Sisko tells her about the cloaking device first. The Obsidian Order already knew about that, but Dukat didn't, so he's annoyed that they didn't share the info with Central Command. She says one cloak didn't seem like much of a threat.
Wow. Dukat actually seemed very annoyed about that.
Yes.
That he didn't know.
That's a big thing in this episode.
Yeah.
About how Central Command doesn't know some things that, or many things that are going on with the Obsidian Order.
Do you think Garrick knew about the cloak? Because remember, he'd been on the Defiant and Odo had found him sneaking around.
I guess that's possible. That's probably how the Obsidian Order found out, because we've already learned that Garrick is telling things to people in the Obsidian Order. So yeah, that's a good guess.
If he did, that would really mean that Garrick doesn't pass anything to Central Command.
Whoa.
Or maybe he does when he feels it needs to.
Yeah, that's probably the case. But also, what's the relationship between the Cardassians and the Romulans?
At this point, I don't believe we specifically know what the relationship is.
Okay.
I think we really are starting to see how much of a problem the Obsidian Order is. They're making what I would say is strategic decisions which affect the Cardassian military.
Especially at this point where they know that the Defiant is a threat.
Yeah.
Then they should have released that information.
Oh, exactly.
They didn't. Yeah. Well, Sisko tells them how the Dominion was able to penetrate the cloak with an anti-proton beam so they can find the Defiant before the Defiant attacks. At least that's the hope.
I'm also guessing that Sisko didn't want to tell them quite everything.
Sure.
Because from the search part 1, the Romulan tells them that a cloaked ship at warp emits a subspace variance.
She did.
Which, if you remember, was the first thing the Dominion ships actually detected. I assume he's keeping that under wraps
Yeah, either that or they figured out how to get around that.
Uh-huh.
I thought that too. I thought that's what he was going to say when he started talking,
Right.
but instead he was like, oh, well, this is how they got through it.
Yeah.
Which I guess you don't need both pieces of info.
But it also means that the cloak is now effectively useless.
Well, but Riker changed the phase variance or something later, some sciencey thing.
Yeah.
So I think there's a way around that too. They just didn't know that that's what was happening when it was happening, but then they learned later and they learned how to get around it. That's my guess.
Oh, okay. That's a good take.
Now we go back to the Defiant and they approach the security perimeter and cloak the ship. Meanwhile, in her quarters, Kira starts taking apart the replicator and looking for ways to cause trouble.
That sounds very Kira. I would have put her in the brig.
Yeah, I'm surprised they left her in there. I think he was thinking she was going to join the cause at some point. Again, these people don't know Kira. They don't understand. In Cardassian ops, they detect a perimeter alert in the Almatha sector, and Dukat orders all ships in that sector to converge on the Defiant. But Sisko realizes something is funny because the ship isn't cloaked. He determines it's a decoy and trying to draw patrol ships out of position. The warp signature is fake. Then they detect another perimeter alert at Outpost 47, but it's too late and the outpost is destroyed. Or at least communications with the outpost are destroyed.
That's what I wondered. Did they actually destroy it, or did they just blow up its transmitter or its power supply or something?
Well, it's hard to know just based on the screen because the dot just disappears, which might just mean they've lost comms with it. So it's hard to say.
Because Riker doesn't seem terribly bloodthirsty.
He doesn't. Well, after destroying that comm station or the outpost or whatever happened, the Defiant is headed into the heart of Cardassian territory. And then Koronos insults Dukat and praises Sisko for his keen tactical instincts. And everyone looks at each other in dramatic music.
Oh, that was a great look from Dukat.
Yeah.
He gives her a wonderfully withering look. This is so Cardassian again. They've got this very critical situation occurring, and they're basically squabbling and point scoring off each other.
Infighting.
Yeah.
Well, part of that is the Star Trek way, is to show you how much more advanced the humans are and how much more advanced Starfleet is.
True.
Yeah. On the Defiant, here's where they realize the anti-proton trick is helping them be tracked. So Riker says to adjust the cloak's resonance frequency.
Yes.
They've taken some damage, and Riker here says tough little ship, which I'm pretty sure is what he says in First Contact as the real Riker.
Yes, this actually made me go and watch First Contact.
You did?
I love First Contact.
Well, anyway, don't get too cozy because there's an explosion and they lose main power and the cloaking device. Kira has caused some kind of explosion in her quarters, which seems like quite a flaw that someone in the crew quarters could disable the ship through the replicator. But anyway... Riker is impressed, but he doesn't understand why she's trying to stop them because she's fought the Cardassians her whole life. But she points out she fought because they invaded her home. He doesn't even live in the demilitarized zone, so she doesn't understand his cause. Yeah. He says he's sick of people dying in the DMZ while the Federation does nothing, which is what Cal was saying.
I don't know. They wrote a very strongly worded letter and they sent some ships. Shouldn't that protect the settlers?
Well, right. Well, Kira worries that his plan is short-sighted and will cause more deaths while he's being hunted, but he's not planning to stay in the DMZ. Then he says she needs to come to the bridge so he can keep an eye on her.
I'm sorry, I have to so disagree with Kira here. I feel this is really off-writing. Would she prefer the Cardassians slowly killed off the settlers, a few at a time? Would that be the better solution? I think she's getting infected with the Starfleet's wash-your-hands approach of, oh, not our problem, somebody else's problem.
Well, okay. I think you could look at it that way, that she's being negatively impacted by the Starfleet. We're so much more superior to you that we're not going to get into the fray, right? You could think that that's one thing that is happening to her. But the other thing that could be happening to her is she could be learning that there are ways to talk yourself out of trouble.
Yeah.
So she's seen Sisko do it a number of times. That is the Starfleet way. I'm going to talk myself out of this. I'm going to talk a computer into something, right? I mean, that's even happened in Star Trek.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So maybe she's learned from that and she's trying to find an angle. And I think once she gets to the bridge, she starts doing that even more.
Yeah.
And she also says some things there that I don't necessarily think she believes, but I think she's finding a way to poke. She's trying to poke at him as a member of Starfleet.
Right.
That's the way I saw it.
That's a good point. As he's a Starfleet officer, she can use techniques to influence that wouldn't necessarily work on
exactly
a Bajoran freedom fighter, say.
Yeah, maybe she's finally learning from her surroundings.
That's a good point. Okay, I get that. I guess at the back of her mind, if this led to war, Bashir is on the front line. And even if it doesn't lead to war, it could lead to the Cardassians reinvading Bajor as part of a grand strategy.
Right.
She's trying to protect Bajor at all costs. Okay.
I feel like when I was younger, I could be more of a hothead about things too at work. And now I'm just not like that at all, because I have learned that the opposite of that sometimes will get you way farther. It won't always, but it will sometimes get you way farther and allow you to accomplish a lot more if you swallow what you're thinking, read the room a little bit better, and then figure out what you should do. And if she's finally learning that, this is the thing I've been complaining about.
Right.
2 seasons now into the 3rd season, that she's not learning from her surroundings, but maybe she finally is.
I think you are right.
Well, let's hope so. If she reverts, then I'll come back and say, oh no, that was just bad writing. Back in Cardassian Ops, Sisko is pacing and thinking out loud about where the Defiant might be, while Dukat sits in his chair brooding. He says he's thinking about his son's 11th birthday, which is today. He was supposed to take him to an amusement park, but because of this thing that's going on, he can't. Sisko says something about how you wish your kids could understand why these kinds of things happen, but Dukat says he'll never understand. He'll just remember that the reason his dad didn't spend his birthday with him is because a Federation officer on a Federation ship invaded his home and kept his father away from him. He won't look back with understanding. He'll look back with hatred, and that's sad. This is so stupid.
I wonder what a Cardassian amusement center would look like. Try the guilty ride?
Like simulations of a tribunal?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure it's roller coasters and who knows. Instead of going on a roller coaster, you get kidnapped by some aliens. I don't know, the Borg. You get assimilated.
I feel like it would be a lot of pro-Cardassian propaganda.
Well, I'm sure it is. I'm sure they have that recording of the guy saying, "Think of the children," playing the whole time. But I'm less interested in that than I am annoyed about this nonsense about the kid. This is an example of where in a real conversation, you wouldn't just let people make speeches like that. Your kid's going to look at this how you tell him to look at it. So be a better father, be a better leader, and give him a better story.
That's interesting that you take that from it. I felt this was completely disingenuous.
Maybe it was.
But he knows Sisko has a son and how he feels about Jake. And he's using this, I think, to manipulate Sisko.
What's he gaining by doing this? Nothing in this episode.
He's trying to put something in Sisko's head that, at the end of the day, he's a father too. And he cares about his kids.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I found this scene really irritating. Because it reminded me of Quark making the speech about how much better than humans the Ferengi are. And Sisko didn't say anything. It's the same thing here. If this is going to make your kid hate humans or hate the Federation or hate Starfleet or whatever, you could do better.
Right. And in that scene with Quark, Sisko should have just slapped him upside the head and told him to go and take a look at your society.
And he shouldn't fall for this with Dukat either. I'm just not seeing how he gets any benefit from playing this game, but he is manipulative, so it's possible he's making it all up, but I don't know. I just didn't like this scene.
Okay.
I think there's so many inconsistencies like that in this episode. I think that's why even our conversation about it feels a little weird. It's like the whole episode is strange because like Kira did something that you didn't think seemed like Kira, and here I thought Dukat was acting the way I didn't think makes sense for Dukat. This whole episode was peculiar in that way.
Yeah, there is some inconsistency.
Yeah. Well, back on the Defiant, the cloak is working again, but they have a neutrino leak from the explosion, and that might make them traceable. They lay in a course for the Orias system anyway, which Kira criticizes as a pointless target. But Riker says the Maquis have been hearing stories of shifting loyalties inside the Cardassian government, and they've gotten their hands on an intelligence report outlining a secret military buildup in the Orias system that the Cardassian Central Command isn't even aware of. He says they're building an invasion fleet, and we can't let them finish. Kira says he's not cut out for being a terrorist. He's acting like a Starfleet officer, more interested in intelligence reports and politics than hurting Cardassians. Riker says he's going after something bigger than just random attacks, but Kira doesn't think that sounds very terroristy. That's my word. She says if she had this ship when she was a terrorist, she would have destroyed Deep Space Nine and made the Cardassians feel the pain. Riker says, I guess we're different kind of terrorists. But she says, you're not a terrorist. You're trying to be a hero. And terrorists don't get to be heroes.
Excuse me? Has everybody forgotten Lee Nallis?
Well, maybe Bajorans didn't really look at him as a terrorist. They just thought he was a freedom fighter.
Well, thinking about it, maybe you're right that Kira is trying to use an approach that would work with a Starfleet officer, because because I have to disagree with everything she said there. And maybe she is completely playing to the sensibilities of Will Riker and what he thinks.
I agree the message she's delivering seems off. And
Yes.
I don't know if it's because the writing is off or if it's because she's just trying to make a point.
Yeah.
If it's a tactic.
I think it's a tactic.
But back at the beginning of season 2, when she was talking to Dax, she talked about how the so-called terrorists or freedom fighters or whoever she was a part of, that they were like insects to the Cardassians. And so they were small and just would inflict damage in any way that they could. Yeah. To her, the amount of damage that could be inflicted with something like the Defiant was unfathomable to her in that role as the tiny insect. This kind of thing, this ship could actually turn the tide if used properly, but he's not using it that way. He's using it for something completely different. It's even questionable that what he's trying to do required the Defiant, but here he is. So I kind of see her point when you look at it like that.
Right.
But at the same time, this nonsense about you can't be a hero if you're a terrorist because, Lee Nollis and all the other people I'm sure who were heroes. In fact, Sisko called her a hero.
Exactly.
The more we talk about this episode, the more I realize it's off. It's weird.
Yeah.
I looked it up and it was written by Ron Moore, who is one of the main producers of Star Trek.
Interesting.
It is. But I don't know how many episodes he wrote, but this one is very strange.
I'm going to stick with being charitable and say she was playing to Riker's sensibilities.
Okay. Well, let's go with that. Back in Cardassian Ops, Sisko is showing that the Defiant is clearly drawing ships away from the Arias system, leaving it defenseless. Dukat says there's nothing in that sector, just an uninhabited planet. Sisko suggests that they send a ship there anyway, but when Dukat starts to do that, the Obsidian Order woman says, "Oh no, you're not doing that. That sector is under direct control of the Order, and you cannot enter it." They argue about it for a while, but she says any warship entering that sector will be destroyed.
Oh.
She says the Order will take any steps necessary to protect the Orion system. Big, dramatic music.
Yeah, Dukat gets pretty annoyed at that.
Oh, yeah.
And then when she throws out and the matter is classified.
Yes. Oh, they love to throw that around.
Oh, yeah. That was also a great piece of Star Trek television. They come into this close-up of the face-off between the two of them, which I think is a face-off between two excellent makeup artists.
Oh, yeah.
They look just fantastic in this scene. It does make me wonder what the makeup would look like in high def. It looks fantastic in standard def. I wonder if it looks quite so good if you saw the original 35mm.
Probably not, because it didn't have to.
Yeah.
I mean, when you watch the makeup effects now in Discovery, it has to be better because it's high def.
Right.
I bet some of it would look great and some of it would look really bad. That would be my guess.
The coffee stain on the shirt.
Yeah, exactly. So Dukat is pacing around in his big boots. He tried to get more info from his friends in Central Command, but nobody there knows anything. Sisko asks who the Obsidian Order answers to, and Dukat says, in theory, they answer to the political authority of the Detepa Council. I don't know if I said that right. Same as the military, but their affairs are kept separate. And this has worked for over 500 years.
It is hard to argue with what worked, though, even if it's oppressive and stagnant.
Well, just because something has worked for 500 years or because that's what you've done for 500 years doesn't actually mean that's the best way to do something.
Yeah, I think this is the rigidity of Cardassian society.
Yeah. And it's starting to show cracks. Well, the Defiant remains cloaked and sees all of the ships poking around looking for them. When they head to the Arise system, the other ships detect a phase shift and start pursuit. Riker orders a full scan of the system as the Cardassian screen shows a ton of ships just descending onto the Defiant. It's a really cheesy graphic, actually.
Yes. I like how Coronis is getting very uncomfortable in her chair.
As they get closer to the Arias system?
Exactly.
Yeah. Dukat says, when you make out your report for the Obsidian Order, be sure to tell them I could have prevented the Defiant from reaching the Arias system if you hadn't interfered. But she says they won't reach the system. You can count on that. And then some Kelvin-class Cardassian warships suddenly appear in that supposedly empty Arias system. Dukat demands Coronos tells him whose ships those are. The Order isn't supposed to have any ships. They are explicitly forbidden from having military equipment of any kind. And Coronos just turns and walks away from him without responding.
Oh, That smug look. And she just smiles and walks away.
Yeah, it's like a general requirement
Oh, yeah.
to be able to be smug. On the Defiant, Kira points out that they're about to be swarmed by a bunch of Cardassian ships, but Riker isn't ready to quit now. She says, "Analyze the situation, Tom. Going to Arias is suicide. The smart move is to make a run for it." But he says that might be what Will Riker would do, but I'm going to continue the mission. And then she pokes at him about how this mission is about him trying to set himself apart from the other Riker.
Oh, so now we're seeing what this is all about.
Exactly.
He's trying to get out of the shadow of Will Riker. This is something personal.
Which makes sense. Will Riker has 7 years on him of growth and being on the Enterprise.
Yep.
And a whole reputation.
And learning from Picard.
Exactly. Having 7 years with a better leader. He has many things that were denied Tom Riker.
Riker was basically ready to be a captain.
Multiple times. He had multiple offers.
Yeah.
And apparently eventually took one. Well, he shuts her down and decides to continue on toward Arias.
I think she's completely right. This is all about Will.
Well, I think she's been poking at him and now she's finally figured it out.
Yeah.
She's found that tender spot that she was searching for.
So she has learned then.
Yeah.
She's taking a Cisco-like approach to this.
Remember invasive procedures?
Yes.
This is what he did in invasive procedures, and she was right there the whole time.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good.
Well, back on Cardassia Prime, Cisco cuts a deal very quietly with Dukat as they whisper to each other in a corner.
Oh, I love this.
He says the Defiant will have sensor logs of what's in the Arias system. They can convince Riker to surrender, and in trade for Major Kira and the Defiant, the Federation will give Dukat the logs. Dukat agrees to the deal as long as he gets Riker. Cisco says only if he agrees to not give him a death sentence. He runs off to get approval for this deal.
I get the feeling here that Dukat has a lot more power and decision-making than he's letting on to Cisco. That none of this is outside of his sphere of influence or control. And I'll have to clear it with the Justice Department. He doesn't need to clear it. He can just do this. What he was angling for is to get the best deal out of Cisco. He wants the prestige of, I captured a renegade Starfleet officer. Look at how important I am. It's the optics that are so important for Dukat.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true, though I'm sure there are little pockets of things that he needs to get buy-in on. So it would make sense that a sentence in particular was something he had to make sure he was going to be able to get. He probably just had to call one particular judge to make sure that he could get it. I doubt that he had to make a bunch of phone calls and convince people of anything. Yeah.
I'll just call the judge that I own.
Exactly.
I'm impressed with Cisco. He's playing Cardassian political power games.
He's very good at knowing what the Cardassians want.
Yeah.
He's very good at that.
This is why he's out there.
Yeah, agreed. Well, as the Defiant approaches the danger zone, they decloak and raise shields, and a firefight starts. They disable one ship, but now there are 5 ships ahead of them and 10 behind them, so they're a bit outnumbered.
Some more ships appeared in the Arias system.
Yes. Then Dukat and Cisco call with the deal for Riker's surrender. Cisco tells him that the sensor logs are more important than the Maquis prisoners. Kira takes him aside and tells him he has to take this deal or everyone on the ship is going to die. So he agrees to the deal, and one of Dukat's ships takes the Defiant into their shields for protection. Dukat sees that the ships from the Arias system are faster than any Kelvin-class ships he's seen before, and he wonders out loud what's going on in that system.
Oh.
The Arias ships in that scene, they look like one-eyed creatures looking into the view screen, and then they turn and leave like they're people, right? They just turn and go, nah, never mind, and they fly away.
Yeah, we're done.
Yeah, it's over.
We didn't want the Defiant anyway.
Right. Riker turns over the ship to Kira, and he tells her to make sure his people get a fair trial. And then she says, "We'll get you out of there, Tom. I promise you that." And then he inexplicably kisses Kira and beams over to the Cardassian ship. And then Kira says, "Set course for the Federation, warp 8, which I thought was maybe a mistake. Where's the Federation? In double quotes. Did she mean Federation space?
Yeah.
Set course for the Federation? I don't know. Anyway, the end.
I'm surprised they didn't have any Cardassian ships wanting to escort them out.
That's true.
Considering that from the Cardassian perspective, they've just turned over the ship from a renegade Starfleet terrorist to a known Bajoran terrorist.
Yeah, and why would all of the Maquis on that ship just give up to Kira? She's not even armed. They're all armed.
Well, they did all seem to be Bajorans.
Yeah, but still, they're still Maquis.
But she's also kind of a Bajoran hero.
It was just weird. Didn't you think the whole ending was weird?
Yeah.
I had to rewatch it and go, what? What?
It did seem a little, why would they give up like that if they were prepared to fight?
This whole episode was about us learning that there was something going on in the Orias system. I mean,
Yes.
The Orias system itself is not what was important, but what was important was that we learned that there was something going on in the Obsidian Order. We had to learn a bunch of things about the Obsidian Order, like how they're not supposed to have military equipment, but look, they do have military equipment.
Yes.
They have a whole thing that they're building, and then we learned about this intelligence report, about them building a fleet. The whole episode was about that. But holy cow, did we stumble along the way to get that information to us. I almost feel like we could have just had one of those scenes, like the scene where Odo was explaining about Tom Riker. We could have just had one of those scenes with somebody explaining the Obsidian Order to us, and we could have had a better episode.
Right.
Whereas this episode was, it was so weird.
Yeah, it did seem to clunk along. But there were some great pieces in it. I thought Kira using basically newfound skills to be able to get Riker to do what she wanted. That was good. And I thought Sisko showing a great understanding of how the Cardassians operate. I thought almost going outside of what the Federation and Starfleet would do to make a deal with them.
I liked the purple outfit of Coronos.
And I loved seeing more of that Cardassian bickering. They're just so wonderfully dysfunctional.
I did not like anything else in this episode.
Really?
This episode was terrible. And when Riker did the big kiss scene with Kira at the end, you were still asleep when I watched this episode yesterday morning.
Yeah.
When that happened, I actually said out loud, "What the heck is this?" It's like, what? What is going on? I
think she liked him more than they let on in the show. I think the chatting for 3 hours was a euphemism.
No. Oh, I'm going to cut that out. That's even worse. Okay. We're at the end of this weird episode. What's your overanalysis?
I only have a couple of overanalysis points because we talked a lot about things in the episode. First of all, I might criticize Kira for enabling the Defiant, but at the same time, this is the second in command of the flagship of Starfleet. So it kind of goes down to, if you can't trust him, then you've got much bigger problems with Starfleet.
But also, she doesn't know him.
Yeah.
She just met him the day before. Would she really release command of the Defiant to him?
Oh, I got the impression she met him last time he was on the station.
No, she says it's Will Riker who she met at Quark's last night where they talked for hours.
Okay.
So here's why it upset me.
Yeah.
So she just met him, but because she's so dazzled by his good looks and charm.
He is a good-looking, charming man.
She completely forgot everything that she knows about her job, her position, the things that she has to take care of, the things she's responsible for, and just was like, oh, ha ha. That annoyed me.
But Will Riker is dreamy, so...
No.
But I will say that this guy is the second in command of the Enterprise.
But do you think the second in command of the Enterprise would just turn off all security for, I don't know, for Kira?
No, because Kira's not in that position.
Or for Sisko?
No, but let's say it was the second in command of Starfleet. You might do that for that person.
Yeah, because there's a protocol about who's in charge of a starship, I guess. I just felt very off to me.
Yeah.
Too easy.
I would let it go because this was supposed to be a very trusted Starfleet officer, so...
Okay.
And I find it hard to blame Kira because she's kind of awesome.
Oh, I see. Yeah, but she can still be written badly.
That's true. You can still be written badly. And, well, I suppose if there's one criticism about that is I don't think there's any chance that Riker could outdraw Kira.
Right.
He'd be pulling the phaser out and she would have already shot him.
Yeah. If she was paying attention, except he was so dreamy.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Don't forget.
It's that smile. Totally dazzling.
Yeah. Oy.
I do like Jonathan Frakes, though, as Will Riker. He does bring that sort of Starfleet-esque swagger.
He definitely does. What else you got?
Okay. next thing, and possibly final thing.
Yeah.
I think that Starfleet, given that it heavily uses voice prints and DNA scans or whatever, should have some kind of marking system, considering they have two people that are literally identical. Maybe the other Riker, Will Riker, has implanted something that would change the reading on the computer, or they could read it, an additional level of security.
Well, they should have a security code. Quite often they have an authorization code that they have to give, which they should never be giving out loud because then everybody can hear it. But that's beside the point.
They do say their passwords out loud.
Right. But if everybody had a code, then that would differentiate you.
Right.
You had to type in your PIN number.
Or even, go one stage further, considering Riker's level of security and things he has access to. Well, Will Riker has some kind of implant that would allow you to differentiate him between Tom.
Excellent point. You would think they would try to do that, especially since Will outranks him.
Oh, yeah. And
so
potentially
much,
has access to very sensitive or very dangerous equipment.
Exactly. Well, we're not that good with the security.
Once again.
Yeah.
And I think my final point, the whole piece of Dukat talking about his kid, I think he was trying to manipulate Sisko or to pretend he had a family life kind of like Sisko.
Right.
Or do you think it was the writers just needlessly pontificating?
I don't know. That scene was terrible because I couldn't fathom what that manipulation would have been about if that's what it was. Or if it was real, then it was just annoying that Sisko just let it be said and just let it go.
Right.
Because it just tells me what a terrible father you are, as you're not trying to give your kids a better story, a more positive story.
Yeah, because we saw Sisko trying to talk to Jake seriously about the Bajoran zealots when they were having problems on the station.
Yep.
And he wasn't just going to, Bajorans are just ignorant.
No, he wasn't. He was trying to be educational and objective.
Which is really what Dukat should have been doing. That's a good point. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that was the point of the scene, to show that Dukat is a truly awful father along with awful everything else.
Well, and a bad leader. Because to me, that's also a leadership thing, is that you have to help people have better stories.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that story is what keeps them on a positive path.
Oh, yeah. That's a good take. I think that wraps it up for me. I don't have anything else to add.
Well, let's go to women in the future.
Okay.
We've talked about most of the things I have in my notes, but there's a couple things we didn't talk about. They often try to convince me in Star Trek that someone like Kirk or Riker has so much sex appeal that they just can't be resisted. Well, Kira has a boyfriend. I guess Riker is almost like a more dynamic version of Bareil. He looks a little bit like him. But still, I found it really hard to believe that she was so drawn to him that she would actually put down her defense mechanisms.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, for somebody who has significant defense mechanisms.
Exactly. That was too easy. So I struggle with that. But, that's written from a perspective of men who think that women can't function in a room with guys who are too good looking. And that's just baloney. And then there was Kira and Dax whispering about boys in ops again. That's annoying.
The high school girls talking about the dreamy guys.
Yeah, that happens a lot on this show, and it's annoying. And it happens a lot because there are women who are main characters. It's like you want to be happy that the show's progressive enough to have female characters as the main characters, but then, they act like they're teenagers in high school, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah, you go back to writing basically a trope.
Exactly. But otherwise, besides that sort of nonsensical stuff, Kira was really good in this episode. She disabled the ship on her own, and she's the one who gave the speech talking Tom out of his terrible plan. Like we said, talking hasn't always been her go-to, but she had an opportunity and she took it and she was successful at it.
Well, not only did she disable the ship, but if you remember, after she blew up that conduit and she's getting the medical treatment on her burned arm, he said, you could have blown out the whole conduit. It could have been a much bigger explosion. And she said that's what she was aiming for.
Yes.
And I think...
she goes for all of it all the time.
Well, that shows her single-mindedness in this kind of thing. Of she will...
to the wall.
Completely put her personal safety on the line to complete the mission. Or complete what she sees as the mission.
Agreed, yeah, absolutely. But then The worst part is that stupid kiss at the end that was so idiotic and out of place on the bridge, and it made me shout at the TV. I mean, that was just dumb. It was really, really dumb.
That was very much a TV trope.
Yeah. Well, Star Trek-y, too.
Well, the original series.
Yes. I forgot, we also had that woman from the Obsidian Order in Cardassian Ops, and she was actually quite good. She made her point, she was very tough, she was in charge, and she looked good in her purple outfit, so thumbs up to her. And that is all I have for Women in the Future. So let's go to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Thumbs up. I enjoyed this episode. Lots and lots of the Defiant. What's not to love?
In episodes that show a lot of the Defiant, does that just automatically get a thumbs up?
Yes, I'm afraid that is how it works.
Well, in my notes, it says rating, no thanks, didn't like it.
That seems about right.
So, thumbs down. The kiss ruined it.
Yeah.
I had written at the very end, the last sentence of just my regular notes from the episode said, I almost liked it. It's like that kiss it was just one thing too far. It's like, it's just dumb.
Right.
So no, thumbs down for me. I thought this one was really a bust. And in many cases, it felt like the characters were not acting consistently with all this development that we've been doing for 2+ years. It was very frustrating. I did not enjoy it. I should have with a TNG character on it and also with a TNG writer, but I did not enjoy it. I thought it went the wrong direction.
Well, I think the characters that came out the best on this was Sisko, showing that political side of Sisko that is something extraordinary.
Well, he also showed his value in strategic thinking, as he was the one who was able to track where the Defiant was going and what was going on there. So he absolutely came out of this looking better than any other character.
And I think Kira, who I initially thought, what on earth was happening? Why is she being written this way? And you pointed out how maybe she was trying to manipulate Riker, and that made a lot more sense.
Right.
And once again, though, stunning makeup with the Cardassians.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just great makeup.
Yeah, the woman in particular, her makeup was really good.
Yes.
Her hair was a little crazy, but no, I thought her makeup looked really impressive. I agree. Okay, that's it.
I think that wraps it up for me.
Well, that wraps up Season 3, Episode 9. Come back next week for Episode 10, and I hope we have a better episode, because this one was not too exciting for me. But in the meantime, if you'd like to give us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can always email us at rebingeit@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at rebingeit. You can also check us out on talkthroughmedia.com, where you can leave feedback for individual episodes, and you can also listen to the other cool podcasts on our network.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.